Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2015 Toyota Highlander, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the etrailer.com Class 3 2-inch trailer hitch receiver. For me, probably my favorite thing about this hitch is the way it's going to look. Now, even though it is, for the most part, pretty much completely visible, especially compared to some of the other ones, it's really just going to blend in. It's going to have that nice matte black finish and honestly just look like it's part of the car. So not only is it going to look good, but it's going to be scratch resistant. So that way if you live on gravel roads or anything like that, you're not going to have to worry about this getting all banged up and potentially rusting out over time. With these Highlanders being really versatile SUVs, I would personally want a hitch that's capable of handling anything you want to throw at it. And that's exactly what this one is going to do. Not only for towing, but also for hitch-mounted accessories. One of the reasons it is good for those hitch-mounted accessories is that it's going to give us some pretty decent clearance actually. The end of the receiver tube is going to come out just past our bumper. So not only is it going to look good, but it's going to really allow us to fold those bike racks and cargo carriers up without having to worry about making contact. And in fact, that's really what our customer today is primarily concerned about. They like to ride their bikes a lot and hit the trails, and they're tired of having to load their bikes in the back of their Highlander, pull the tarp out, and fold the seats down every time they want to go out. With the hitch now, we're able to put a bike rack in it, easily load and unload it, and call it a day. So with this being a Class 3 hitch, it's going to give us that 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube opening, really common size, and you can literally find just about any accessory for this size hitch. It's going to have a reinforced collar for extra strength, and I think it looks pretty good too. Kind of gives the hitch a more finished or complete look to it. It's going to have the standard 5/8 size pin hole. Now keep in mind a pin and clip does not come included, but if you need one you can pick it up here at eTrailer. And something that I do really like is the safety chain openings. They're going to be plate style and really big and really easy to get to. So you shouldn't have to worry at all about any interference with your pin and clip or anything for that matter. You can use just about any size hook that we might have, whether it be small or large. Now if you plan on primarily using your hitch for towing, this one is probably my top pick. It's going to have these really high weight capacities and be really easy to use. Matter of fact, my father has a Highlander, and I put this exact hitch on there for him. And that's because he really wasn't interested in those hitch-mounted accessories. He really wanted to pull his trailers and everything else around. From time to time, he'll pull his John boat around from the lake to the river, pull his utility trailer around when he's doing some projects, and his wave runner back and forth out of storage. Never had an issue with it. He says it works out perfect every single time. And all of the trailers that he uses the hitch to pull around don't even come close to maxing the hitch out. As far as the maximum gross trailer weight rating goes, it's going to be 6,000 pounds. So that's going to be the amount of weight pulling on the hitch. So that's the weight of your trailer plus anything that you might have on it. As far as the maximum gross tongue weight rating goes, it's going to be 900 pounds. And that's a really high number, and you shouldn't have any issues using whatever size cargo carrier or bike rack that you would like to use. And that's because that weight rating is going to be how much force is applying down on the hitch. Now this can be used with a weight distribution system, which is a separate component, but if you do use that, the maximum gross trailer weight rating does increase to 8,000 pounds. But the maximum gross tongue weight rating does remain the same at 900. However, I do recommend it's never a bad idea to check with your Highlander's owner's manual to make sure your Toyota can pull that much weight safely. Now I'm going to give you a couple of measurements, and you're going to use these to help figure out which hitch-mounted accessories to get. From the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, it's going to be right at about 17 inches. So if you do plan on doing some towing, chances are pretty good you're going to need to get a ball mount with a very slight rise. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of our rear bumper, that's going to be about 2 inches. And you're going to use that measurement to help figure out and if any folding accessories you might have can be stored in the upright position without contacting the bumper. So at the end of the day, a hitch you really can't go wrong with. Honestly, it's my personal favorite that is available for the Highlander. Looks really good, super easy to use, has those high weight capacities. It's going to be able to handle anything you want to throw at it. Now, as far as the installation goes, it's really not too bad. Everything's fairly easy to get to and see, and it shouldn't take you a whole lot of time to get it installed. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and do that together now. To begin our install, we're going to be underneath the back of our Highlander, and over here on the driver's side, we're going to need to remove this plastic underbody panel. So to get our panel off, we're going to have a few different types of fasteners that we need to remove. We're going to have two push-pin style fasteners, one here and one here. To get them out, you can use a trim panel tool or a flathead screwdriver, pry underneath the head of it, and work that fastener completely out. That same technique for this one here. And once we have them out of the way, we're going to have, looks like 3 10mm screws. So I'll grab my socket and zip them out. And then if you kind of work up along this edge, next to your spare tire a little bit, we're going to have 2 plastic nuts that we're just going to have to loosen up. These actually aren't going to come off. They're going to be attached to the panel, but we need to loosen them from the studs. You can usually do this by hand and with a 12mm socket. If they just want to kind of keep spinning, sometimes you do have to put a little downward pressure on the panel. And this one actually just popped off. So that's okay. But once we have everything loose, we can grab our panel and work it out from underneath of our Highlander. Here in the center, we're going to have 2 bumper tabs, and we're going to have to loosen them up. And they're going to be held in place with a push-pin style fastener, just like the ones that held on our underbody panel. So we'll go ahead and pry them out, kind of bend the tabs down a little bit, just like that. On the passenger side, we're going to have this little plastic deflector here that we do need to trim off some. That way we'll have room for the hitch. There's a measurement in your instructions, and I just drew a line across to let me know where to cut. It's relatively thin plastic. I'm going to use a Dremel tool to cut it. You could use a pair of snips or something like that to do it as well. The passenger side, we're going to have a tow hook here that we need to remove. It's going to be held in place with 2 bolts. So I'll use a 17mm socket to pull those out. We can just kind of set our tow hook out of the way. If you move a little bit further towards the front of our vehicle on the frame rail, we're going to have this little metal bracket here that's attached to the frame rail, and we need to get this out of the way as well. So one of the bolts will be a 17mm, and the other bolt that we'll need to take out will be a 10mm. And once that's out of the way, on the frame rail, we're going to have a couple of plugs, and we need to pop them out, that way they don't interfere with our hitch. So real straightforward. You can use a screwdriver, trim tool, whatever you have. These simply just pop right out. Now here on the inside of our bumper, we're going to have 2 plastic push-pin fasteners, and we're going to pop them out. Then if we just work our way back over to our driver's side frame rail, again, we're going to have some plugs in it that we need to pop out so they don't interfere with our hitch. Now we are going to have to do a little bit more trimming. The two bumper tabs that we removed the push pins from earlier, we're going to have to cut these pretty far back, almost flush out of the way. That way the hitch has room to get up into position. So again, I'm just going to use a Dremel tool, but you can always use a pair of snips or something like that. Now what we're going to do is go over our attachment points that is going to hold our hitch up in place. And they're going to be the same setup on each side of our Highlander. So we're going to have a total of 3 attachment points. One here, here, and here. And those are factory well nuts inside of the frame. And so I do suggest cleaning those threads out using a tube brush and some lubricant, just to get out any dirt or debris that may be inside. So the hardware that we're going to use to secure the hitch to the frame rail is going to be the same for all of our attachment points. We're simply just going to have a bolt and a conical tooth washer. So it'll go like that. We want the teeth on the washer to face up towards the hitch. So once we have the hitch lined up with our attachment points, you'll simply just thread this hardware into the holes. Now with an extra set of hands, we'll raise our hitch into position. You want to be sure to go over your muffler on the passenger side. And then we can line up the holes in our hitch and get all of our hardware started. It does help to get at least one going on each side. That way the hitch will support itself while we're working on the rest of them. With all of our hardware in place and hand tight, we can go ahead and snug it all down. At this point, we can grab our torque wrench and tighten all the hardware down to the amount specified in the instructions. So what we're going to do now is trim out our underbody panel according to the diagram and the instructions. This is optional. You don't have to reinstall this panel if you don't want to, but in our case, we're going to cut this out and put it back in place. So I just drew some lines here according to the instructions on where I need to cut. What we can go ahead and do now that our panel is trimmed out is simply just reinstall it the opposite way that we removed it. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the etrailer.Com Class 3 trailer hitch receiver on our 2015 Toyota Highlander.